Right after our daughter was born, my husband named her Joanna. He said gently, "From now on, you and Joanna are my most beloved treasures in this world." I was deeply touched, until one day I found out. His ex-girlfriend's name was Anna. At our daughter's 100-day celebration, a female guest I had never seen before showed up. I quietly asked my husband Joe, "Who is she?" Joe's face turned unnatural. He said, "A colleague." I was a bit surprised. I had never heard Joe mention this colleague. They shouldn't be very close, right? But this girl gave a very grand gift, a jade plaque engraved with the name Joanna. Joanna was the name Joe chose for our daughter, only told to family and a few close friends. How did this girl know? Before I could ask further, the screen started playing the prepared VCR, and the waiter pushed in the prepared cake with a sign that read, "Joanna, my most beloved treasure." Every word on the sign was handwritten by Joe, the calligraphy full of love. But suddenly, it was like she was electrocuted. The girl who gave the jade plaque broke down emotionally, covering her face and crying, her slender shoulders shaking, tears falling through her fingers. The suddenness of it caught everyone's attention. I was about to walk to the center stage holding my daughter but stopped in my tracks. Joe paced anxiously and called his sister Maria over. "Take her out." Maria opened her mouth, as if wanting to say something. Joe glared at her. "Shut up." Maria pouted, went over, and helped the unsteady girl out of the room. My doubts grew heavier. Kathy, also at the banquet, took my daughter so I could step out to the lobby. There the guest register was displayed. Most guests I knew, but some were Joe's friends or relatives I wasn't familiar with. Scanning those unfamiliar names, my eyes fell on the last line. It was like a hammer hit my skull. I widened my eyes, dizzy, confirming and reconfirming that name. Anna. Though I had no evidence, I was almost certain in an instant. That girl who just cried was Anna, and that jade plaque engraved with Joanna, which I thought was a customized blessing gift for my daughter, now sent a chill up my spine. Who exactly is she? I wanted to ask Joe, but he suddenly disappeared. Maria told me, my brother had an urgent work matter. Her tone calm, but her eyes flickered nervously. I didn't ask further, knowing Maria wouldn't tell me the truth. I replied shortly, "I'll take Joanna home first." It used to feel so right calling my daughter's name, but now my throat felt tight. Kathy joined me in the ride home, softly patting the baby and comforting me. "Alice, don't overthink it, it's probably just a coincidence. Joe loves you so much, he wouldn't do anything to betray you." It wasn't that Kathy was intentionally speaking for Joe. But in our 2 years of marriage, Joe had indeed been a model husband. At home, he turned over his salary card, took charge of all housework, always brought my favorite snacks and fruits after work, and gave me massages daily during pregnancy. Out in public, he maintained distance from other women, called me on video during business trips, and even taped a sign on the passenger seat designating it as Alice's seat. I married into a different city, my parents divorced and each remarried, neither wanted to acknowledge me, so I was alone in a foreign place striving to succeed. Introduced by a company leader, I met Joe, and when he learned about my background, he hugged me with pity. "It's okay, Alice, wherever I am, that will be your home. Joe probably really does love me, right? He should cherish our family, right?" I tried to convince myself, but no matter what, my heart felt like it was weighed down with lead, unable to shake off the heavy feeling. It seemed my daughter felt the same, suddenly crying and spitting up milk. Kathy and I fumbled, finally asking the driver to turn towards the hospital. Thankfully, the doctor said it was nothing serious. While waiting for the medicine, Kathy saw I was zoning out and said, "I'll hold the baby, you rest a bit." I nodded, closed my eyes but couldn't sleep, so I got up and wandered around the hospital to clear my mind. I had sent Joe several messages asking where he was, called him many times, but he hadn't responded to any. What urgent company matter could it be? Just as the thought formed, I stopped in my tracks. At the end of the corridor, I saw Joe, who was supposed to be dealing with urgent work matters. He didn't see me, head down, seemingly suppressing his emotions. Beside him was the girl who cried at our daughter's celebration. I silently approached, eavesdropping on their conversation. I already said, it's over between us. Joe's voice was low. Stop coming to find me, Joanna. My gut feeling turned out to be true. This girl was Anna from the guest list. I just wanted to see if you're doing well. Anna's voice trembled, as if about to cry. The jade plaque you gave me back then, I've kept it with me. Thanks to it, I've stayed healthy despite many hardships. So I wanted to give it to your daughter, to pass on that blessing. Joe seemed to be a bit moved too. He let out a soft sigh. Back then, I didn't have much money and couldn't buy an expensive gift. So, I got that jade pendant and promised that I'd replace it with a diamond ring later. Anna's tears finally fell. To me, it's always been the most precious gift. I stood there, shaking. My mind was frozen, but the information kept pouring in. Anna was Joe's ex-girlfriend. That jade pendant was Joe's love token to Anna back then. And Joe, when our daughter was born, he named her Joanna. He held my hand, his voice gentle but earnest. From now on, you and Joanna are my two most precious treasures in this world. Anna wiped her tears and asked Joe, is your daughter's name Joanna? Did you name her? Joe was silent for a long time. I trembled in that silence, like waiting for a guillotine to fall. After a while, Joe spoke. I thought you'd never come back after you went abroad. So, I wanted to find a way for you to always be in my life so that I'd never forget you. The guillotine came crashing down. At that moment, the life I thought was full of happiness shattered completely. That night, I held my daughter and waited for Joe to come home. We needed to have an honest talk. But Joe didn't come back. He sent a message, Alice, there's an urgent need at the project. I might have to work overnight. Put the baby to sleep early. I looked at my phone, forcing a bitter smile. He wasn't at work, he was at the hospital with Anna. Kathy had connections at the hospital and helped me find out. After leaving the baby's 100-day banquet, Anna went to the hospital due to arrhythmia and shortness of breath. She told Joe she'd been suffering from depression for years. Just as I was about to turn off my phone, a text from an unknown number popped up. It was a photo of a hand with an 4 drip, with Joe sleeping peacefully beside it. The message was simple, do you think he loves you? He'll come back to me whenever I want. I stared at my phone, trembling. The message was from Anna. She was intentionally provoking me. I sat in the dark, looking at my daughter's sleeping face. For a fleeting moment, I regretted bringing her into this world. A world full of deceit, betrayal, and despair wasn't where she belonged. But the next second, I scolded myself harshly and hugged her tightly. This is my child. I love her. No matter what kind of person her father is, I will protect her. I understood clearly why Anna showed up at the baby's 100-day banquet and sent me that text. She wanted to see me lose my mind in extreme shock and sadness. So, I forced myself to stay calm and pretended not to know anything. Meanwhile, I asked my well-connected friend to help me look into Anna and Joe's past. The truth soon emerged. Joe and Anna were college sweethearts. They were deeply in love at the time. But later, Anna's mother fell ill and needed a huge amount for surgery. So, she broke up with Joe and married a rich guy, moving abroad. A few months ago, she divorced the rich guy and returned to the city. My heart felt like it was dipped in ice as I listened. Before our marriage, I had asked Joe about his past relationships. He had answered casually, just one, a college love. She dumped me because I had no money. Do I hate her? Probably. But Alice, let's not talk about these ancient stories. They don't matter anymore. Now, all the clues started to piece together. After Joe graduated, he worked like a madman to make money. I advised him not to flaunt his wealth, but he loved showing off his new watches and cars on Instagram. Turns out, it was all to show Anna. He was trying to prove himself. It also showed he always cared about her deeply, never really letting her go. Anna was right. As soon as she beckoned, he'd go back to her. Lately, Joe had been coming home less and less. Each time, Anna would send me photos. I found her Facebook, filled with happy photos. Someone who once said my cooking was bad now eats it all up. Now it's his turn to cook for me. The picture showed Joe peeling shrimp. On his hand, our wedding ring was removed, leaving a faint white mark. He took off his ring while being with Anna and put it back on when he came home. I shut my phone off coldly, telling myself to stay composed. That evening, Joe came home. He cooked for me, wearing an apron, busy in the kitchen. Anyone would think he was the perfect husband. My Alice's favorite shrimp. He brought the dish over and peeled each shrimp for me. There's a saying, marry the man who will peel shrimp for you. What about the man who peels shrimp for two women? The time was right. Staring at the pile of peeled shrimp, I slowly took out a document. Joe glanced at it with a smile. What's so important? The next second, his smile froze. The words on the document were clear. Divorce agreement. Joe's eyes widened in shock and panic. The property division is all written out. I won't take advantage of you. But the custody of our daughter goes to me. The anticipated outburst never came. My voice was almost calm. Joe, I'll let you have your love. But please, from now on, don't use your ex-girlfriend's name to mess up my daughter's life. I stood up, wanting to leave. But then I heard a loud noise behind me. Joe knelt down. Alice, listen to me, it's not what you think. I was just about to speak. Then I heard a second voice behind me. Joe, what are you doing? I turned around, surprised. My front door was somehow open. Joe's sister, Maria, stood at the entrance, looking shocked. And beside Maria was a slender figure in a white dress. Anna. Maria saw Joe kneeling on the ground and got anxious. She shouted at me, Alice, I warn you, don't go too far. My brother is the man of this house. Then she rushed over to pull Joe up. Joe, what are you doing kneeling to her? Get up. Joe, with a stern face, shook off Maria's hand. This is between Alice and me. Stay out of it. And then Joe glanced at Anna and immediately looked away. Who told you to bring her here? Don't you think it's messy enough? Maria was stunned by Joe's harsh tone. She just stood there, dumbfounded. Anna, who hadn't said a word at the entrance, walked over to Joe's side after a moment of silence. Joe opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Anna knelt down beside him. I clearly saw the panic in Joe's eyes. What are you doing? Joe tried to pull Anna up, but she didn't move. She just looked up at me with tear-filled, pitiable black eyes. I'm sorry. Did I cause a misunderstanding between you and Joe? She said softly. I'm really sorry. I'll disappear. But I have one request. Joe is the best man in the world, and I love him the most. When I'm not around, please take good care of him. With that, she turned to look at Joe. She didn't cry, but the unshed tears in her eyes made her look more pitiable. Don't blame Maria. She only worried I'd get hurt. The living room light shone on Anna's face. Only now, I noticed she had several bruises, her cheekbone was scraped, and dark red scars were visible. Joe exclaimed, What happened to you? Anna shook her head and looked down, not saying a word. Maria, crying, stomped her foot. It's that alcoholic father of Anna's again. Her brother is getting married soon, and they need money for the bride price. Her mom needs money for medicine. The whole family is just bleeding Anna dry. Anna's dad said if she didn't get back with her rich ex-husband and bring home some money, he'd beat her to death. How could I stand by and do nothing? Anna looked down at the floor, her face pale, saying nothing. Tears streamed down her face. Maria, with a tearful voice, asked, Are you going to push Anna into the fire pit? Silence. The whole room was oppressively quiet. After a moment, Joe took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. Take my card and book a room for her at the nearby hotel. Maria, still unwilling, said, I wanted Anna to stay in my room on the second floor. Joe got angry. This is Alice and my home. Maria pouted and helped Anna up. Anna, let's temporarily stay at the hotel. Anna stumbled a bit as she stood up, almost falling again while Maria supported her out. Joe instinctively reached out to help, but quickly withdrew his hand. He watched her all the way until she left, his eyes glued to her back. Only after the door shut did Joe seem to wake up from a dream. He walked quickly to me. "Alice, listen to me. Anna is my ex-girlfriend. You saw what her family situation is like. I really pity her, that's why I helped. I won't sign the divorce papers. Our daughter is still so young. I can't let her be without a family. But I understand how you feel. I promise I won't see Anna again." Joe reached out to hold my hand. "Alice." I pulled my hand away, utterly exhausted. "This is your home now," I said softly. "I'm leaving with our daughter." I turned to our daughter's room, ready to take her away. Joe panicked and grabbed me. "Alice. Don't touch me." We started struggling, knocking over the coffee table. The glass fruit bowl shattered, sending pieces everywhere. Just then, the nanny ran in hastily. "The baby has a high fever." Both Joe and I stopped instantly. At 3 a.m., the hospital was bleakly lit. Our daughter fell asleep after getting a shot. I watched her peaceful little face, my heart aching unbearably. Joe came up beside me, gently patting me. "Alice, let's talk." We walked out to the hallway. My hands were cold and shaking. Joe took off his coat and draped it over me. I wanted to refuse but had no strength left. When our daughter got sick, Joe ran up and down. His hand was cut and he didn't even have time to bandage it. He kept soothing our daughter until she slept. All the nurses admired and said to me, "What a great dad. Where could you find such a wonderful husband, one who earns well and takes care of the family? You're really lucky." I could only muster a bitter smile, overwhelmed by helplessness. "Alice." Joe adjusted the coat and spoke softly, his voice patient and gentle. "I know you're hurt. I made mistakes. Whatever the punishment or compensation, you decide. But we can't get divorced." He firmly said, "Have you thought about how hard it is to raise a child alone? I absolutely can't let you go through that hardship. Alice, I'm already 30 this year. No matter how unforgettable young love was, it's all in the past. I know how important family is to a man. So, I'll protect our daughter and keep this family safe. Please trust me, okay?" I felt like I needed to clear my mind. Joe said he'd look after our daughter and told me to go home and get some sleep. I left the hospital but couldn't stop worrying, so I came back. When I got to the hallway, I wanted to tell Joe I was back, but then I saw him answering a call. After hearing what was being said, Joe's face changed drastically. He grabbed his phone and rushed down the stairs. Anna had slit her wrists. Thankfully, the wound wasn't deep and Maria found her in time to get her to the hospital. Anna lay on the hospital bed, her hands wrapped in thick bandages, lips pale from blood loss. Her eyes were red and puffy, but she gently comforted the weeping Maria beside her. "Don't cry, Maria. It doesn't hurt." Maria clutched Anna's hand, her face covered in tears. "Anna, how could you do something so foolish?" Anna stayed silent, and finally, tears slowly rolled down her cheeks. "I just feel like there's nothing left in the world worth holding on to. If there was anything, it was Joe." Joe, standing a bit away, stiffened slightly when he heard this. "But now, I've seen that Joe is very happy. And if I stay, I'll only hinder his happiness." Anna gave a desolate smile, "So, I just thought no." Joe couldn't hold it in anymore. He strode over to Anna's bedside, knelt down, and looked into her eyes. "Joanna, we promised, whether together or apart, we would be happy." Anna's face showed a sad smile, her eyes filled with despair. "Yeah, but without you, what happiness is there for me?" It started raining. The city's thunderstorm season came earlier than usual this year. In the fierce sounds of wind and rain, I heard Joe and Maria arguing in the hallway. They didn't know I was there, so they argued passionately. Maria's voice piercing through the storm, still sharp and grating. "If you and Anna can't be together, how can I ever believe in love again?" Joe's voice was exhausted. "Alice is your sister-in-law. I never felt that way. Maria screamed with a tearful voice, how can you settle for a lifetime of compromise? With a flash of lightning, Anna rushed out. She was wearing a thin hospital gown, trembling like a fallen leaf in the storm. Joe, Maria, please stop fighting, I'll leave. I won't be a burden to you anymore. The next second, Anna closed her eyes and fainted into Joe's arms. Anna. Maria began sobbing loudly. Joe quickly lifted Anna into his arms. Call the doctor. We can't take Anna to a hotel again. I'm afraid she'll do something stupid. I know. Joe said, rushing toward the parking garage with Anna, shouting to Maria, I'm taking her home. I stood under the eaves at the front door, rain soaking my hair. Joe had taken Anna home. I went into the hospital room, picked up my daughter, and silently said, don't be afraid, baby. Even though we don't have a home right now, Mommy will make sure we have one in the future. After my daughter recovered, I took her to Kathy's place. Even though Joe tried to keep it secret, word got out. Joe's mom showed up with a big basket of fruit, having heard about our separation from somewhere. Alice, what Joe did was really wrong, and I'll have a word with him. But listen to me, I've been through this. For a marriage to last, you have to turn a blind eye. Sometimes I know you're angry now, but think about it. You're 28, and you have a child. If you get divorced, how will you find anyone better than Joe? Kathy was doing some cleaning nearby, and she waved her broom right over Joe's mom's head. Dust fell everywhere, and Joe's mom looked displeased. What are you doing? Cleaning up. Kathy casually complained while sweeping, it's so hard to clean up trash. There's always more, big and small. Better get rid of it fast. Joe's mom coughed angrily and left, but not before telling me, Alice, don't let fights last overnight. Come home once you've thought it over. Kathy slammed the door shut. After a few seconds of silence, she put down the broom and sat across from me, exhausted. Alice, I'm mad for you. But being a single mom is really hard. I've never experienced it, but I can imagine. So if you really go back to make up with Joe, I'll understand. I was silent for a long, long time before finally smiling bitterly. It'll be really hard, raising a daughter alone. But that's life. Every path has its hardships, and you have to choose one. I made up my mind. I must get a divorce. But Joe wouldn't agree. Even after Anna moved into the guest room originally meant for Maria, Joe kept persuading me. Her depression is severe, and she has no reliable family. So, she can stay here for a while. Once she's better, I'll have her moved immediately. I realized I'd developed a strange skill. I could listen to Joe talk, let it go in one ear and out the other without retaining any of it. Just like now, I nodded calmly, all right. Joe thought I agreed, and he sighed in relief, hugging me, Alice, thank you. I stood there, numb, forcing myself to suppress the discomfort and nausea. I silently told myself to endure it a little longer. Anna will definitely make a move. There's no way she can just stay at our house for a while and then be sent away by Joe. So she definitely planned to find a way to stay by Joe's side permanently. All I needed to do was wait patiently. Things happened faster than I expected. A week later, Joe had a college reunion. He took Anna with him, saying that catching up with old classmates would make her feel better. Joe tentatively asked if I wanted to go too, but I declined, saying I needed to take care of our daughter. Even though I didn't go, a girl among Joe's college friends, who was quite close to me, told me what happened. As soon as they arrived, some insensitive classmates started making a fuss. One of them nudged the other quickly. What are you doing? Joe's already married. I thought Joe and Anna had always been together. During the gathering, everyone drank and gradually got drunk. One of Anna's friends, emboldened by the alcohol, came up to Joe and patted him on the shoulder. Joe, you really, really owe Anna an apology. She divorced that rich guy because of you. She paid a huge price to return home just to find you, and now you're married. Joe looked at Anna in shock. You divorced because of me? Anna's eyes dimmed, and she looked down. If I can't spend my life with the one I love, what's the point of this life? She gently shook her head. I made a mistake once. Now I want to correct it, even if it costs everything. She swayed unsteadily, as if what she just said was only drunken truth, and now she was sober again. Looking accusingly at her friend, Anna complained, "You know Joe is married. Why bring this up? Why not? You love him so much, and you still do." The friend, still tipsy, looked at Joe. "What about you, Joe? Do you still love Anna?" That night, Joe and Anna came back together, both very drunk. Joe tried to help Anna to the bed, but Anna grabbed his tie, pulling them both down. At first, it was just their heavy breathing mingling, then kisses, then confessions, then tender whispers. In the end, their clothes were all over the floor, the moonlight shining on their bodies, old passions rekindled, old dreams revisited. However, just when Joe was calling out Anna's name passionately, a baby's heart-wrenching cry suddenly pierced the night outside. Joe froze, as if suddenly waking up. He got up quickly and put on his clothes. When he reached the door, wearing his rumpled shirt, he found the door ajar. And I was standing right outside, watching him quietly. "Alice," I said softly. The baby couldn't sleep, so I was walking her around. "You two were too noisy." Joe took a deep breath, cold sweat forming on his temple. "The baby just saw everything with me outside the door." Joe's face turned deathly pale. I looked at him, heartbroken. "Joe, she saw it. She saw it with me. Of course, you can say she's just a baby and understands nothing. But she saw it. She will grow up. Do you want her to always see this?" With every word I said, Joe's face grew paler. Finally, I went to the study. When I returned, I had the divorce papers I had prepared long ago. "Joe, this is the only way. Sign it. You'll still be the child's father, and this will be your last protection for her." Joe stayed silent for a long time. He finally looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. "Alice, I know I was wrong. I'll do my best to make it up to you and our daughter." I stayed silent and looked away. He sighed deeply, picked up the pen, and signed his name. Anna's sobs came from the bedroom. Joe looked at me, sighed deeply again, and went to comfort her. After he left, I returned to the bedroom. Our daughter was sleeping sweetly in her crib. I took out my phone. It had a recording. The baby wasn't with me outside Joe's door. That heart-wrenching cry was something I found online beforehand. I would never let my daughter be hurt. I chose a bad father for her, so it's my mistake to fix. I picked her up. From now on, she's just my child. Anna probably thought she had finally won. I went to Joe's office to get my things and ran into her in the elevator. She grinned provocatively. "What's Miss Alice doing at my boyfriend's office?" I studied her face and asked, "Are you over your depression?" Anna's smile widened. "I'm finally with my true love, so yes, I'm better." I pursed my lips and whispered, "Congratulations." Stepping out of the elevator, I went to Joe's office. He wasn't there, just his secretary, who told me, "Joe said, you can take whatever you want." I looked around the office, seeing traces of my careful touch. The plants I placed by the window, the books and art I bought for Joe on the shelves, a photo of us as a family on the desk. "Take it all." Anna followed in, standing in the back with crossed arms, watching me. I was packing my stuff into boxes, one item at a time. Anna just watched silently as I picked up the cheap things. But when I grabbed the jade ornament from the shelf, she immediately stopped me. "Sorry, I like this one," she said. "Joe told me he gave it to me, so you can't take it." I didn't say anything, just put the jade ornament down and reached for another painting. "Sorry, you can't take this one either," Anna said, stopping me again and flashing a bright smile. "Joe told me he gave it to me, too." "Alice, sorry to say this, but all the good stuff in this office is mine. The only things you can take are the worthless ones." Anna picked up a photo of our family from the desk and tossed it to me. She then replaced it with a college photo of her and Joe. I stood still for a couple of seconds, looking at the photo in my hand. It was taken before our daughter was born. I was holding our daughter, Joe was standing beside us, and we all had happy smiles. After thinking it over, I tore the photo in half, taking the part with me and my daughter. Once I finished packing, I picked up the box and looked at Anna, who was sitting behind the desk. She was grinning, clearly pleased to become the new owner of the office. Ms. Anna, you can sit there for now, but you'll be leaving soon, I said gently, because I'm going to sell this office. The smile froze on Anna's face before she suddenly lost it. What do you mean? I guess Joe never told you, I chuckled softly. This company was co-founded by me and him. After the divorce, he gave half of his shares to our daughter, and I'm her guardian. Plus, with the recent shares I purchased from other small shareholders, I now own 51% of the company. So, I call the shots here. Anna's mouth gaped open like a fish out of water. It took her a moment to speak, her voice sharp and strained. Joe gave his shares to his daughter? Not just that, the rest you can ask him, I replied. I dragged my box towards the door and looked back, smiling faintly. So you can keep the jade ornament and painting, the few $1,000s they're worth should help with your living expenses. With that, I pushed the door open and left. Behind me, I could hear a loud crash, likely Anna throwing everything off the desk. Then came her shrill crying and the secretary's attempts to calm her down, but I didn't look back. Yeah, I intentionally stirred up Joe's guilt and used it to my advantage. When he heard our daughter crying while he was reconnecting with his ex, it really hit him hard. Plus, it was tough raising a child alone. Joe eventually offered to leave me the house, the car, and most of his assets, basically walking away with nothing. I put up a brief resistance, but soon accepted everything. Joe never expected me to take control of the company so quickly. He didn't think the shares he gave to our daughter would make much difference. But the truth is, while he was busy peeling shrimp for Anna every day, I had already started preparing for the worst by talking to other shareholders. While Anna was busy trying to win over Joe step by step, I was keeping my emotions in check, pretending I knew nothing. I took care of our daughter while planning my counterattack. I waited for this very day. And Joe, tangled in his feelings for Anna, didn't notice my moves at all. In our new rented house, Kathy was feeding my daughter. She had grown. She could sit up and smile. When Kathy fed her peach puree, she made happy cooing sounds, showing off her 2 tiny teeth. I heard Anna came over, asking you to give back the house, Kathy said. I was organizing my daughter's toys and just hummed in acknowledgement. Anna had been coming over every day, demanding I return the house I shared with Joe. She even brought her mom and brother, causing scenes at the door. Anna just cried, telling the neighbors how I was so heartless, taking advantage of her kind, honest ex-husband. Good thing you moved out and rented this place ahead of time. Otherwise, you'd be dealing with her every day, said Kathy. Now, if she causes any trouble, it'll be to the real estate agent. And when the house gets sold and new people move in, they'll probably call the cops on her. I finished organizing the toys and placed a drumming bear in front of my daughter. I built this company from scratch with Joe. If Anna and Joe are truly in love, they should experience the process too. Kathy laughed. True. Let's not talk about her anymore. Have you picked a new name for your daughter? Emily, I said. Her name is Emily. Time flew by. Weekdays, I managed the company. Weekends, I spent with my daughter. She brought me new joy every day. She called me Mama for the first time while having breakfast. At the zoo, she babbled back and forth with the birds. She won second place in a community bean stacking contest, bringing home a plush toy as a prize. The next day, she pulled off the toy's nose. Joe initially visited her often, and I allowed it. After all, he was our child's father, and legally, he had visitation rights. But he came less and less, because Anna kept causing a scene. She even followed him to my place, where I strictly forbade them from entering. Anna shrieked, accusing me of wanting to get back with Joe whenever she wasn't around. Alice, do you have any shame? Don't think I don't know you're using your daughter to try and win Joe back. Joe's my boyfriend. Is it fun stealing someone else's man? Her voice was so sharp that Joe couldn't stop her. My daughter often ended up crying, scared from the racket. This repeated a few times until Joe stopped coming over. I heard that he and Anna were planning to have their own child. But that news has been circulating for a while, with no actual progress in sight. I wasn't really that concerned about the whole thing, but as I was leaving work on Friday, Maria cornered me in the parking lot. She stood right in front of me and asked, "Did you screw things up between my brother and Anna?" "Listen, Alice, I haven't liked you for a long time. Joe and Anna are true soulmates. I've seen their love since I was a kid. They represent the most beautiful form of love to me, Alice. Real love won't be defeated by reality. No matter what tricks you pull, my brother will never come back to you." Maria had never been friendly to me since I started dating Joe. Joe explained that his sister was naturally rebellious and too dependent on him. I thought Maria was just young and didn't hold it against her. But now, looking at Maria's ridiculous and self-righteous face, I felt disgusted. Miss Maria, Joe and I are already divorced. He and Anna can do whatever they want, it has nothing to do with me, I said. And if you keep blocking my way, I'll call the cops. I tried to walk past Maria towards my car, but she grabbed my arm, her nails almost digging into my flesh. Impossible. If it weren't for you, my brother wouldn't be cold to Anna, you bitch, and that brat of yours. I couldn't take it anymore and turned back, ready to slap Maria. A clear sound echoed in the parking lot. Maria was hit hard, her head tilting to the side, and moments later, her cheeks swelled up, but I wasn't the one who hit her. I was a bit too slow. The person who struck her was standing beside Maria, breathing heavily. Maria clutched her face, looking at him in shock. "Mike." Joe's face was dark with anger. Just as Maria opened her mouth, he slapped her other cheek. Her face was bright red and swollen, but she had never seen Joe so furious. She didn't even dare to cry. "Go home and stop embarrassing me," Joe said in a low voice. "And if I hear you insult my daughter again, I'll break your legs." Maria sobbed and left. Joe turned to me, his voice rough, "Alice." In the dim light, I looked at Joe. He had lost weight, his cheeks were sunken, and his eyes were bloodshot. He looked pretty miserable. "Can we talk?" he asked. Since he had been paying child support on time, I agreed to have a coffee with him. At the coffee shop, Joe kept rubbing the ceramic cup of his cappuccino as if struggling with words. After a long pause, he finally said softly, "Can we get back together?" I almost thought I misheard you. "Me? Remarry?" I pointed at him and then at myself. Pain flickered across Joe's face. "Alice, I know you're angry. You think I only loved Anna and used you as a suitable marriage partner, deceiving your feelings. But that's not true. I love you. You came into my life when it was at its darkest. After Anna went abroad, I thought I had lost the ability to love. But you lit up my life like a ray of sunshine. So warm, so reassuring. Anna was just a regret from my youth. I was too hung up on that regret, so when we reunited, I couldn't help it. But Alice, I have realized deeply over this time that you're indeed the one I love. I can't live without you." Joe looked at my face, his voice trembling with pain. "Alice, could you answer me? Please, don't stay silent." I finished my hot Americano. It was so bitter but very sobering. "Joe," I finally spoke, "there's really nothing more to discuss between us." Joe looked like he had been struck by lightning, his bloodshot eyes becoming even redder, his whole demeanor pleading, "Alice, I'm begging you, give me another chance. I want to be there for you and our daughter." I shook my head. "Our daughter doesn't need you. A father like you will only make her disappointed in men from a young age." Joe's face turned ghostly pale. "I don't know what happened between you and Anna, but for the sake of the 2 years we were married, I'll offer you some advice." I put down my coffee cup and stood up. "Joe, cherish the person in front of you." I walked away, leaving Joe sitting there dumbfounded. I had said what needed to be said, but I doubted Joe would really listen. For men like him, what's lost is always the best, and the unattainable is always tempting. Their lives are a sequence of chasing after empty dreams, wasting time on illusions. Joe kept calling me, always begging for reconciliation. I ended up putting him on my blacklist, only unblocking him on child support days. Life then became a bit quieter. On cool nights, after Emily fell asleep, Kathy and I would have midnight snacks in the living room using flashlights. I had new gossip from my contacts at the hospital. Joe went with Anna for a checkup. Turns out, Anna's had 3 abortions and it's hard for her to conceive, Kathy said. Joe lost it and caused a scene at the hospital because Anna had always lied, claiming she remained pure out of love for him, even after marrying that rich ex-husband. Why would she lie about that? I laughed, adding some handmade noodles to the leftover shrimp broth, leisurely stirring them with my chopsticks. Maybe she wanted to be Joe's untarnished, white moonlight. Unfortunately, what looks perfect tends to shatter ugly. No wonder Joe had been contacting me so much recently. On one hand, he was probably longing for the goodness of our past. On the other, seeing his pure Anna turn out to be just another disappointment must have been utterly despairing for him later. More things came to light. For example, Anna's mom wasn't actually sick back then. She left Joe for a rich guy, not out of some forced necessity. Her divorce from the rich guy wasn't because she had no choice. It was because Anna was caught cheating. After the divorce, she didn't disappear. She was still hanging around in America trying to hook up with new rich guys. When that didn't work out, she came back to find Joe. When I heard all this, I wasn't too surprised. But I didn't expect that after Anna showed her true colors, the first person to lose it wouldn't be Joe. It was his sister, Maria. Maria and Anna used to be inseparable, best friends. But now, with Joe's downfall, Maria was dragged into it too. Her boyfriend, who was the son of one of our clients, broke up with her after Joe stepped down as CEO. Anna, it's all your fault. My brother's life is messed up. If it weren't for you, Joe would have been fine, and our family would have been great. Maria, are you crazy? How is this my fault? If you want to blame someone, blame Alice. Anna was getting more and more irritable lately. Everyone, Joe, Maria, her parents, her brother, blamed her. Her carefully maintained facade was crumbling. Besides, what does your breakup have to do with me? You're ugly and have a bad temper. If you weren't Joe's sister, do you think anyone would want you? Maria screamed and lunged for the steering wheel in Anna's hands. Stop the car. Maria, are you nuts? I said, stop. Yes, this argument happened in a moving car. The dash cam recorded all of it. And then came the screams. During the struggle, the car hit a bridge pillar. Maria died on the spot. Anna was paralyzed from the waist down. Even though Maria had grabbed the wheel, Joe blamed Anna for his sister's death. If it weren't for her, Maria wouldn't have died. She was only 22, just a kid, Joe kept repeating at Maria's funeral, holding my hand as he sobbed. He looked like he'd been through hell, nothing but skin and bones. Alice, I can't take this anymore. Please, I beg you, don't leave me. I stayed silent for a long time and then said, okay, my daughter and I will stay with you. A rare glimmer of hope appeared in Joe's eyes. He looked eagerly at the door, waiting for someone to bring our daughter. 5 minutes later, a tall, handsome man walked in holding her. As he came to me, my daughter spread her arms and said in her sweet toddler voice, "Want mommy? Mommy missed you too, Emily." I took her from his arms and looked at Joe. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the man who had brought Emily in, his face full of disbelief. Who is he? Before I could answer, Emily squealed, "Daddy." She wasn't talking to Joe, she was talking to the man who brought her. The man looked back at Emily with a big smile. He was in a suit, but had baby snacks and diapers in his pockets, looking a bit ridiculous. Joe was losing it. He grabbed Emily's tiny hand. "Baby, I'm your daddy." Emily yanked her hand away and started crying. The man quickly picked her up and soothed her, until she smiled again. Joe looked utterly broken. He turned to me, Alice. You wanted our daughter to be with you, so I had her new dad bring her. I stayed calm. By the way, Joe, I'm getting married. Joe's face went blank. Slowly, a look of unbearable pain crept into his eyes. Alice, I thought we would always be a family. The man took Emily away. I looked at Joe and shook my head. Joe, I used to think we'd always be a family. But what did you do? You named our daughter after your ex-girlfriend, just to remember your lost love. When she had a fever, you promised to take care of her but left her in the hospital to go see your ex. And when she wasn't even better yet, you brought your ex home. She slept next door while her dad was with another woman. When you did all these things, did you ever think we were a family? Joe, you don't deserve to be my husband or Emily's father in the end. Emily's last name is mine. She's my daughter, Alice's daughter. With that, I walked away, leaving Joe standing there, frozen. Outside, the tall man handed Emily to me. I smiled, thanks for the help. He shrugged, no problem, anytime you need a hand. He wasn't actually my husband-to-be. I just said that to prevent Joe from clinging to me after Anna's accident. He's Kathy's cousin. Kathy introduced us, we've had a few meals and watched a movie together. Daddy. Emily called out to him again. Emily, sweetie, I'm not your daddy, he said gently, patting her head with a smile. But, I'll try my best. The sun was shining, and I turned away and smiled softly. So later, Joe and Anna got married. Anna's parents argued every day, claiming Joe's family ruined Anna's life. They said if Joe abandoned Anna now, he'd be the biggest ingrate ever, and they'd fight for Anna's justice even if it killed them. Joe, under immense emotional and public pressure, completely lost it. He ended up marrying Anna in a confused state. But pretty much right away, he regretted it. Every time he saw Anna's face, he thought of Maria, who had died, me, who divorced him, and his daughter who barely knew him. He hired a caregiver to look after Anna, and wouldn't even glance at her. The caregiver slacked off because Joe didn't care much himself. Eventually, Anna developed painful bed sores. The once beautiful girl in a white dress became a woman who screamed curses from her bed every day. Anna's day-to-day despair broke her. In the end, she somehow got her hands on poison and poisoned both herself and Joe. They say Anna and Joe first met on a lovely spring day. And it was also on a sunny spring day that Anna gave them both poison juice. The start of this love story was as beautiful as its end was tragic. Neighbors found them and took them to the hospital. It was a big deal and hit the news. Anna took too much poison and died before they even reached the hospital. Joe was in critical condition but couldn't be saved due to multiple organ failures. I visited him one last time. Pale and skeletal, Joe lay on the hospital bed, looking nothing like the man I once loved. He called my name, Alice, where's Emily? I thought for a moment and decided to tell him the truth, at home, watching cartoons with her new dad. Joe started coughing violently, and all the machines around him went off. This was it, the last time I'd see him. He moved his lips and tears fell. He mouthed, I'm sorry. I shook my head. Hope lit up in his eyes. I knew what he was asking. Did shaking my head mean I forgave him? Did it mean I finally let go? I sighed softly. Shaking my head meant I didn't accept his apology. The pain he caused me and Emily could never be undone. We were doing well now because of our strength, not because of his apology. As I left the room, I heard Joe's desperate gasps. Medical staff rushed in, but eventually, they stopped all attempts to save him. Joe was pronounced dead. I touched my face. It was dry. It seemed like I had cried all my tears those first months after discovering Joe and Anna. Now, I wouldn't shed a single tear for this man. Leaving the hospital, the sun gently shone down. My husband sent me a video. Emily was dancing to the end credits of a cartoon in the living room. Food was already set on the table, waiting for me to come home and eat. I drove away, the view in the rearview mirror fading into the past. I moved forward, leaving old memories and old faces behind, blending into the endless spring breeze.